Hey there, welcome to the Focus Podcast with Tara Lee. This is the place where we talk about real life, real relationships, and how to grow through it all. If you're looking for simple mindset shifts, better communication, and deeper connections, you're in the right spot. Let's dive in. Hey, welcome back. I am so glad you're here. Last week we talked about what happens inside you when your spouse pulls away and why the panic response tends to make things worse before they get better. And if you haven't listened to that episode yet, I'd encourage you to go back and start there because today we're building on it. Today I want to talk about the dynamic underneath the distance. Not just the individual moves, your move and their move, but the pattern those moves create together. Because I think one of the most important things that you can understand right now is this. What's happening in your marriage isn't just your spouse shutting down or you reaching out too hard. It's a cycle, a dance. And it's a dance that both of you are doing even if it doesn't feel that way from the inside. And when you understand the dance, you stop fighting your spouse and start targeting the actual problem. So let's get into it. I want to start by giving this a name because naming it takes some of the personal sting out of it. It's called the pursue-withdraw cycle, and it shows up in some form in almost every marriage I work with, especially the ones in real pain. Here's how it goes. One person in the marriage tends to move toward conflict, toward discomfort, toward the hard conversation. They want to talk it out. They want resolution. When they feel disconnected, they feel the urgency to close the gap. This is the pursuer. The other person tends to move away from conflict, toward space, toward quiet. When things feel intense, they shut down. They go internal. They need room to process. This is the withdrawer. Now, neither of these responses is wrong on their own. In a healthy marriage, the pursuer's desire for connection and the withdrawer's need for regulation can actually balance each other out. But when the marriage is under stress, those two tendencies start to work against each other. The pursuer feels distance and starts reaching harder, and the withdrawer feels intensity and pulls further back. The pursuer, now more scared, increases the urgency, and the withdrawer, now more overwhelmed, increases the distance, and you're stuck. Here's what I want you to really hear, because this is the piece that tends to unlock something for people. Both people in this cycle are scared. The pursuer is scared of abandonment, scared the silence means it's over, scared that if they don't keep trying, no one will. Their nervous system reads the distance as danger and it says, do something, close the gap, right now. The withdrawer is scared too, but a different thing. They're scared of the conflict, the intensity, the emotional weight of conversations that always seem to go sideways. So their nervous system reads the urgency as danger and it says, get some space, protect yourself, survive. Neither person wakes up in the morning and thinks, I'm going to damage my marriage today. Both people are just responding to what feels threatening to them. But from the outside, especially from your spouse's perspective, your scared response can look very different from what you intend. When you're pursuing from fear, it can look like pressure, like demands, like emotional intensity that's really hard to be around. Even when your heart behind it is love. And when your spouse is withdrawing from overwhelm, it can look like not caring, like giving up, like coldness. Even when what they're actually experiencing is shut down. You're both suffering. You're both doing the best you can in the moment, and you are accidentally making it harder for each other. That is the dance. Okay, this is where I want to walk you through how I use the focus framework with people who are stuck in this pattern, because the framework is really designed for exactly this moment, when you know something needs to change, but you feel like you're spinning. So for those of you who are new here, focus is the framework I coach from. It stands for facts first, own your thoughts, choose your feelings, understand your actions, and shape your results. And I want to walk you through what it looks like applied specifically to this pursue-withdraw dynamic. So facts first. When you're in the middle of a painful pattern, your brain is not working from facts. It's working from fear. And fear writes stories that feel completely real, but aren't necessarily true. So let's get into facts. The fact is your spouse pulled away. The fact is conversations have been tense. The fact is you feel disconnected. Those are facts. The story your fear tells is they don't love me anymore. It's already over. I'm the only one who cares. There's no coming back from this. Now, maybe some version of those stories is true, but maybe not. And maybe the problem is when you act from the story instead of the facts, you make moves that tend to confirm the story. You pursue harder, they withdraw further. And now you have more evidence for the story. So start with the facts. What do you actually know right now to be true? Next is own your thoughts. This is where you start to notice what's running underneath your behavior. What thoughts are driving you to reach out at 11 p.m.? What thoughts are making every silence feel like a verdict? What thoughts are making you rehearse conversations in your head for hours? Write them down if you need to. Get them out of the spin cycle in your brain and onto paper where you can actually look at them. Because here's what happens when you own your thoughts instead of just acting on them. You create a gap, a tiny bit of space between the thought and the move. And that space is where you start to get your power back. Next, choose your feelings. I know this one can sound like toxic positivity. Choose to feel better. That's not what I mean here. What I mean is when you notice what you're feeling, you can start to ask whether that feeling is the one you want driving your next move. Panic is a feeling. Desperation is a feeling. And they are both completely understandable given what you're going through. But are they feelings you want running your marriage right now? What would it look like to choose steadiness instead, or groundedness, or compassion for yourself and for your spouse? You may not be able to get all the way there, but even a partial shift makes a difference. Understand your actions. This is the piece that requires some real honesty. What do you actually do when you're scared in your marriage? Do you text repeatedly? Do you push for conversations at the worst possible time? Do you go quiet and then icy? Do you apologize over and over, hoping for reassurance? Do you try to explain yourself in ways that just go longer and longer? No judgment here. All of those things make sense as fear responses. But when you can name what you do, you can start to see whether those actions are creating the results you want or whether they're feeding the very cycle you want out of. Next, we have shape your results. This is the piece that gives people hope because it's where you realize you actually have agency. You can't control whether your spouse moves toward you. You can't force them to show up in the way that you need, but you can change the moves you're making. And when you change your moves, the dance changes. Not always immediately, not always dramatically, but the pattern shifts. And pattern shifts are what create openings. So let's get practical here. If you're the one who tends to pursue, what does a different move actually look like? It does not look like going silent and punishing. It does not look like pretending you're fine when you're not. It does not look like stopping all connection. It looks like this: learning to regulate yourself before you reach. So instead of reaching from the scared panic place, that 2 a.m. urgency that says, I need to close this gap right now, you learn to pause. You tend to yourself first. You get grounded. And then when you do reach toward your spouse, you reach from a steadier place. Steadiness is not the same as detachment. You can be warm and grounded at the same time. You can care deeply and still come from a calm place. In fact, that combination, warmth without urgency, is probably the thing that your spouse needs most from you right now. Because here's what they're experiencing. Every approach has felt heavy, has felt intense, like there's this test that they might fail. When you show up without that urgency, something in the dynamic starts to shift. They don't have to brace themselves. The room gets a little safer. That doesn't happen overnight, but it starts somewhere. Okay, if you're thinking, but why do I have to be the one to change? I want to speak to this directly because it's the question that almost always comes up at this point in the conversation, and it's a fair question. Why does it feel like the burden is always on you? You're already the one paying attention, doing the work, listening to podcasts, trying to figure this out. And now I'm telling you to change your move first. I understand why that feels unfair. But here's what I want you to consider. The goal isn't fairness. The goal is a different outcome. And the only move you have to access is your own. When you change your move, when you stop adding urgency to a situation that's already overwhelmed, you create a different kind of opening. Not because you've given in and not because you've made yourself smaller, but because you've created conditions where connection becomes possible again. That is not weakness. That is leadership. And in my experience, when one person gets steadier, the other person slowly starts to have room to show up differently too. And it's not guaranteed, nothing really is, but it's the most reliable path towards a different dynamic. Okay, here's what I want you to take away from today. The pursue-withdraw cycle is not a character flaw. It's not proof that you're too needy or that your spouse is emotionally unavailable forever. It's a pattern, and patterns can change. They change when someone decides to go differently, to pause before the panic move, to tend to themselves first, to reach with warmth instead of urgency. And that person can be you, even this week. Now, next week we're going to talk about something that's closely connected to all of this, and what it looks like when you feel like you're the only one trying, and whether one person can actually change the marriage dynamic. It's one of the most important conversations we're going to have this month. If today's episode resonated with you and you're ready to stop running the same loop, book a consultation call with me right now. The link is in the show notes, and let's get you out of the cycle. If this episode helped you, share it with someone who's stuck in the same pattern, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Thank you for being here. I will talk to you next week. Thanks for hanging out with me today on the Focus Podcast. If something stood out or helped you in some way, feel free to share it or leave a quick review. It means a lot. Keep showing up, keep growing, and I'll catch you in the next episode.